The stars above the planet New Haven had disappeared. 300 alien warships blocked the sky like a dark curtain, their massive hulls casting shadows across the colony below. The Empire had arrived, and they had come to conquer. Fleet Admiral stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Wrath. His 4 eyes scanned the planet below with cold satisfaction. 17 star systems had fallen to his fleet in the past 10 years. 17 worlds had bent their knees before the might of the Empire. This human colony would be number 18. His second-in-command, a younger officer named, approached with a data tablet in his clawed hands. His scales were a nervous shade of yellow, which meant he had news that might displease the Admiral. "Speak," commanded. "Admiral, our long-range sensors have detected a response from the humans." "How many ships?" Hesitated, his scales shifted to a deeper yellow. "1, Admiral, they have sent 1 ship." Turned slowly, his massive head tilting to one side. He thought perhaps the translator had made an error. "Repeat that." "1 ship, Admiral. A single destroyer-class vessel. It is approaching from the inner system." The bridge crew fell silent. Then slowly, a strange clicking sound filled the air. It took a moment to realize that Admiral was laughing. "1 ship," the Admiral repeated. "These humans are either very brave or very stupid, perhaps both." Far across the void of space, Commander Jack stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance. He was a man of 52 years, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of decades spent in the darkness between stars. His uniform was neat but worn, the kind of clothing that had seen real work and real battles. The Defiance was a Resolute-class destroyer, built 30 years ago and rebuilt twice since then. She was not the ship in the human fleet. She was not the fastest or the most powerful, but she was tough, and her crew knew her secrets better than anyone. Lieutenant Commander Kate Morgan stood beside her captain, studying the tactical display with calm brown eyes. She was younger than Jack by 15 years, with short dark hair and the kind of quiet confidence that came from surviving situations that should have killed her. 300 ships, she said. That is quite a welcoming party. Jack nodded slowly. The do like to show off. They think big numbers mean everything. Do they not? Jack smiled, but there was no warmth in it. They might, against anyone else. The communications officer, a young woman named Cole, looked up from her station. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the alien flagship. They want to talk." "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and the face of Admiral appeared. He was reptilian, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and a mouth full of teeth that looked designed for tearing flesh. His translator rendered his words in a flat, mechanical voice. "Human vessel, I am Fleet Admiral of the Empire. You are outnumbered 300 to 1. Your colony is surrounded. Surrender now, and I will consider showing mercy to your civilians. Resist, and I will burn your world to ash." Jack stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "Admiral, I am Commander Jack of the USS Defiance. I have a counter-offer for you." "You are in no position to make offers, human." "I disagree. Here is my offer. Take your fleet and leave this system. Go back to your empire and tell them that human space is not for conquest. Do this, and we will let you go in peace." The clicking laughter returned, louder this time. "You threaten me. With 1 ship. Human, I have conquered species far more powerful than yours. Your 1 little vessel is nothing but a speck of dust before my armada." Jack remained perfectly still. "I am giving you a chance, Admiral. A chance that you do not deserve, but one that I offer anyway. Take it. Leave now. Because if you stay, if you try to harm the people on that planet below, I will destroy your fleet." Admiral stopped laughing. His 4 eyes narrowed with what might have been anger or might have been curiosity. "You actually believe that, do you not? You actually think you can fight us?" "I do not think it, Admiral. I know it." The alien commander studied the human face on his screen for a long moment. There was something in those human eyes that made him uncomfortable, though he could not say what it was. It looked almost like pity. "Your species is insane," declared. "Prepare to die." The transmission cut off. On the bridge of the Defiance, Kate raised an eyebrow. That went well. Jack turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Torres, a stocky man with a shaved head and steady hands. "Ben, begin pre-deployment sequence. I want the swarm ready to launch in 5 minutes." "Aye, Commander. Swarm deployment standing by." Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer Miller received the order through his earpiece. He was a big man with thick arms and grease permanently embedded under his fingernails. He had served on the Defiance for 12 years, and he knew every bolt and wire in her hull. "All right, people," he called to his team. "You heard the man. Power up the deployment bays. Let us show these lizards what a human ship can really do." His assistant, Ensign Adams, began activating systems that the sensors could not detect. Deep within the hull of the Defiance, 40,000 machines began to wake up. In orbit above New Haven, Governor Lisa Park watched the confrontation from her command center. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, elected by the colonists to keep them safe. Right now, she felt the weight of 2 million lives pressing down on her shoulders. Her aide, a nervous young man named Sam Wheeler, stood beside her. His face was pale. "Governor, should we begin evacuation? The shelters can hold most of the population, but if the aliens start bombing from orbit, we might not have much time." Lisa shook her head. "No evacuation, Sam, not yet." "But Governor, there is only one ship out there. How can one ship possibly stop an entire fleet?" Lisa turned to look at him, and there was something in her expression that Sam did not understand. It looked almost like confidence. "Sam, let me tell you something about humans. When they look at the Defiance, they see one small ship. They count guns and armor and engine power, and they think they know what they are facing. But they are wrong." "Wrong how?" "They do not understand what a human ship really is. They do not understand what we carry inside us. Our history, our creativity, our refusal to ever give up. They see a destroyer. They should see a nightmare." Sam wanted to believe her. He wanted to trust that the single vessel hanging in space between them and 300 warships could somehow save them. But the numbers made no sense. "I hope you are right, Governor." Lisa turned back to the window watching the stars. "So do I, Sam, so do I." On the Defiance, Commander Jack sat down in his captain's chair and took a deep breath. The next few hours would determine the fate of 2 million innocent people. No pressure. "All stations report ready," Kate announced. Jack nodded. "Then let us begin. Take us in, helm, nice and slow. Let them think we are scared." The Defiance moved forward, one small ship against an empire. And they had no idea what was coming. The USS Defiance drifted closer to the Armada like a mouse approaching a gathering of cats. Admiral watched the tiny vessel on his tactical display and felt a mixture of amusement and contempt. These humans were either conducting some kind of elaborate bluff, or they truly had lost their minds. "The human ship is within weapons range," reported. "Should I order the fleet to open fire?" Considered this for a moment. Part of him wanted to simply obliterate the foolish vessel and be done with it. But another part, the part that had kept him alive through 17 conquests, whispered caution. There was something wrong here, something he could not quite identify. "Not yet," he decided. "Let them come closer. I want to see what they are planning." On the bridge of the Defiance, Lieutenant Ben Torres watched his instruments carefully. His fingers rested near the activation controls, waiting for the order that he knew was coming. "They are not shooting," Kate observed. "That is interesting." Commander Jack nodded. "They are curious. They want to understand why we are not running away. That curiosity will cost them." Distance to the nearest enemy vessel. 50,000 kilometers and closing. Jack turned to his communications officer. Patch me through to the whole ship. Channel open, Commander. Jack stood up from his chair and spoke in a calm, steady voice. All hands, this is the commander. In a few minutes, we are going to engage an enemy fleet that outnumbers us 300 to 1. I know the odds look bad. I know some of you might be scared. That is okay. Being scared means you understand the situation. He paused, looking around at his bridge crew. Every face was focused, determined. These were his people, his family. But here is what I want you to remember. We are not just any crew. We are human. Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have wiped them out. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They walked on the moon with computers weaker than your wristwatch. They never gave up, and neither will we. In the engine room, Miller and his team listened with quiet pride. In the medical bay, Dr. Amy paused in her preparations to hear her captain's words. Throughout the ship, 240 souls stood ready. Today we show what humanity is made of. Today we protect our people on New Haven. Today we win. All stations prepare for combat. Out. The channel closed and Jack sat back down. Ben, status of the swarm. 42,000 drones ready for deployment, Commander. All systems green. Begin launch sequence. What happened next would become legend throughout the galaxy. The hull of the Defiance began to change. Panels that had looked like ordinary armor plating slid aside, revealing launch bays hidden beneath. The bays were not large individually, but there were hundreds of them, covering almost every surface of the ship. From these bays, small objects began to emerge. They were drones, each one about 2 meters long and shaped like a pointed cylinder. They had no weapons that they would recognize, just cutting tools, magnetic clamps, and small explosive charges. Individually, each drone was weak, almost harmless. But there were 42,000 of them. They poured from the Defiance in an endless stream, spreading out into space like a cloud of metal insects. Their simple artificial minds activated, receiving targeting data and forming into attack patterns that had been programmed by human tacticians who understood one fundamental truth. Numbers could be beaten by numbers. On the flagship, Eternal Wrath stared at his sensor display with growing horror. Admiral, the human ship is deploying something. Thousands of small objects. No, tens of thousands. Leaned forward. What kind of objects? Missiles. Unknown, Admiral. They are too small to get a clear reading. They do not appear to have conventional propulsion or weapon systems. Then what are they? Before could answer, the first wave of drones reached the nearest cruiser. They did not attack in the way the aliens expected. They did not fire weapons or detonate on impact. Instead, they attached themselves to the ship's hull like parasites, their magnetic clamps holding them firmly in place. Then they began to cut. Plasma torches designed for salvage work sliced through armor like it was paper. The aliens had built their ships to withstand energy beams and missile impacts, not thousands of tiny blades working in perfect coordination. Within seconds, the cruiser's hull was compromised in dozens of places. Then the drones detonated. Each explosion was small, barely enough to destroy a shuttle. But 40 explosions happening simultaneously, all placed at critical structural points, tore the cruiser apart from the inside. The ship broke into 3 pieces, atmosphere and crew venting into the cold vacuum of space. "We have lost the," announced, his voice shaking. "The cruiser is also under attack, so is the destroyer Malik." Admiral watched in disbelief as his fleet began to die around him. Ships that had conquered worlds were being eaten alive by swarms of tiny machines. His weapons officers were firing frantically, but the drones were too small and too fast to target effectively. For every drone they destroyed, 100 more took its place. "Target the human ship," commanded. "All vessels concentrate fire on the source." But the Defiance was already moving. While the fleet focused on the drones, Commander had ordered his helmsman to dive beneath the alien formation. The destroyer's engines flared bright blue as it accelerated to speeds the bulky ships could not match. "Enemy vessels attempting to track us," Kate reported. "They are having trouble. Our ECM systems are jamming their targeting computers." Jack watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The drone swarm was doing exactly what it had been designed to do. It was not meant to destroy the entire enemy fleet by itself. It was meant to create chaos, to break the enemy's formation, to make them panic and make mistakes. And they were panicking. Ships that had been flying in perfect formation were now scattering, trying to escape the clouds of drones that pursued them. Some captains were firing blindly, their weapons hitting friendly vessels as often as enemies. The coordination that had made the fleet so dangerous was falling apart. 12 enemy ships destroyed, Ben reported. 18 more heavily damaged. The swarm is still at 70% strength. Down in the engine room, Miller pushed his reactors harder than they had ever been pushed before. Warning lights flashed, but he ignored them. The Defiance needed power, and he would give her everything she needed. "Chief, the secondary reactor is running hot," warned. "I know, keep watching it. If it hits critical, we shut it down. Until then, we keep pushing." On the surface of New Haven, Governor Lisa Park watched the battle unfold through orbital cameras. The images were chaotic, filled with explosions and debris, but one thing was clear: they were losing. Sam Wheeler stood beside her, his mouth hanging open. "How is this possible? Those drones are destroying capital ships." "Because they do not understand humans," Lisa replied. "They think in terms of big weapons and heavy armor. They fight the same way every time, relying on overwhelming force. Humans do not work like that. We adapt. We innovate. We find the weakness in any enemy and exploit it." "But where did those drones even come from? The Defiance is not big enough to carry that many." Lisa smiled. "It is when you design the whole ship as a carrier. Commander told me once that the Defiance has more interior space dedicated to drone storage than to crew quarters. The humans who designed her understood that in space, quantity has a quality all its own." Above them, the battle continued. The drone swarm had destroyed 25 ships and crippled 30 more. The survivors were in disarray, their chain of command broken, their confidence shattered. And the USS Defiance was just getting started. Commander Jack studied the tactical display and saw opportunity. The enemy flagship was exposed, its escort ships scattered by the drone attacks. Admiral had made a mistake, and Jack intended to make him pay for it. "Ben," he said quietly, "warm up the Lancer." His tactical officer grinned. "With pleasure, Commander." The Defiance had one more surprise for the Empire. Far from the battle, in a neutral observation station at the edge of the system, Ambassador of the watched the destruction of the fleet with a mixture of horror and dark satisfaction. He had warned them. He had told them exactly what would happen if they attacked human space. They had not listened. His aide, a young named, stood beside him with trembling tentacles. They were a peaceful species, traders and scholars who had avoided war for over 1,000 years. Watching this level of violence was deeply disturbing to them both. "Ambassador," whispered, "how is this happening? The humans sent one single ship against 300. His large eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "Because you are thinking like a... You see one ship, and you count its guns and its armor and its crew size. You calculate its combat effectiveness using standard formulas. They did the same thing. And they were wrong. Completely wrong. When you evaluate a human vessel, you cannot use standard formulas. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not build weapons like other species. Their entire approach to warfare is different." Watched as another cruiser broke apart under the assault of thousands of tiny drones. Different how? Finally turned away from the display to look at his young aide. Let me tell you about humanity. Let me tell you what I learned when I first made contact with their species 20 years ago. He activated a holographic display showing an image of Earth, the human. It was a blue and green planet, beautiful and peaceful from orbit, but knew the truth beneath that beauty. Humans evolved on a death world. Their planet is covered with predators, poisonous creatures, extreme weather, and natural disasters. Floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes. Their environment tried to kill them constantly, and yet they survived. They did more than survive. They conquered their world. How? By being the most adaptable, most creative, most stubborn species in the known galaxy. When they faced a problem they could not solve with strength, they solved it with cleverness. When they faced an enemy they could not defeat alone, they worked together. And when they faced extinction, they simply refused to die. Pulled up another image showing human history. Wars, plagues, famines, disasters. Century after century of struggle and suffering, and somehow always triumph. But the most important thing to understand about humans is this. They have been fighting each other since before they developed language. Their entire history is one long series of wars, battles, and conflicts. They have spent thousands of years developing new ways to kill each other. And in all that time, they learned one crucial lesson. What lesson? That victory does not go to the strongest or the most numerous. Victory goes to the one who thinks differently, the one who surprises their enemy, the one who refuses to play by the expected rules. Looked back at the battle, where the human ship was now diving through the scattered formation like a predator through a school of fish. The drones. No one expected the drones. Exactly. They build big ships with big guns because that is how they have always won. They use overwhelming force because it has always worked. But humans do not think like that. When a human commander looks at an enemy fleet, he does not ask how can I match their strength. He asks how can I make their strength irrelevant. On the USS Defiance, Commander Jack was asking himself a different question. How fast could he kill the enemy flagship before the regrouped? The Lancer was warming up, its magnetic accelerators humming with stored energy. It was the Defiance's main weapon, that ran through the entire length of the ship. It fired solid tungsten projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. At that velocity, the projectile did not need explosives. The kinetic energy alone was devastating. Lancer at 80% charge, Ben Torres reported. Targeting solution locked on the enemy flagship. Kate studied the tactical display with concern. The flagship is starting to move. Admiral must have realized he is exposed. He realized too late, Jack replied. Ben, fire when ready. Aye, Commander. Lancer at full charge, firing. The Defiance shuddered as the magnetic accelerators released their payload. A tungsten rod 3 meters long and 30 centimeters wide shot from the bow of the ship at a velocity that made it nearly invisible. It crossed the distance to the flagship in less than a heartbeat. Admiral never even saw it coming. The projectile struck the eternal wrath amidships, punching through shields that were designed to stop energy weapons, not solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. It tore through the outer hull, the inner hull, the reactor compartments, and out the other side, leaving a tunnel of destruction in its wake. Secondary explosions rippled through the flagship as ruptured power conduits and breached fuel tanks ignited. The great ship, home to 3,000 warriors and symbol of imperial might, broke apart in a bloom of fire and debris. Admiral died in his command chair, his last thought one of complete bewilderment. He had conquered 17 worlds. He had crushed every enemy he had ever faced, and he had been killed by a single ship that should not have been able to scratch his paint. On the bridge of the Defiance, the crew watched the flagship die in silence. There was no cheering, no celebration. They were professionals and the battle was not over yet. Flagship destroyed, Kate confirmed. Enemy fleet is in total disarray. Multiple vessels breaking formation. Some are trying to flee. Others appear to be signaling surrender. Jack nodded slowly. The head of the snake is gone, but the body can still bite. Broadcast on all frequencies. Give them one chance to surrender. Cole activated the communications array. Channel open, Commander. Jack stood and spoke clearly. Attention vessels, your flagship has been destroyed. Your admiral is dead. Your fleet is broken. You have one opportunity to survive this day. Power down your weapons and surrender. Any ship that continues to fight will be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to decide. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Ben, how many ships are still combat effective? Roughly 140 enemy vessels still have weapons capability. The rest are destroyed, crippled, or already powered down. And our drones swarm. Down to about 18,000 active units, still enough to cause significant damage. Jack sat back down in his chair and waited. 5 minutes was not a long time when your life hung in the balance, but he wanted to give the every chance to make the right choice. He was not a cruel man. He took no pleasure in killing, but he would do whatever was necessary to protect his people. In the engine room, Miller finally allowed himself to breathe. The secondary reactor had held together, barely. His team was exhausted, covered in sweat and coolant, but they had kept the ship running when it mattered most. "Good work, everyone," he said quietly. "We are not done yet, but the hard part might be over." Adam slumped against a console, her young face showing the strain. "Chief, I never want to do that again." Laughed, a tired but genuine sound. "Get used to it, Ensign. This is what it means to serve on a human warship. We push ourselves beyond what should be possible, and somehow we survive." On the observation station, Ambassador watched as ships began powering down their weapons one by one. The surrender was spreading through the fleet like a wave. "It is over," said softly. "The humans won." Shook his head. "This battle is over, but what happened here today will echo through the galaxy for generations. Every species will learn what humans did at New Haven. Every empire will think twice before threatening human space." Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Considered the question carefully. I do not know. Humans are complicated. They can be kind, generous, creative, and loving. They can also be this: warriors who destroy entire fleets with ingenuity and determination. The galaxy has never seen anything quite like them. He turned away from the display, suddenly tired. "I need to prepare my report for the council. They will want to know everything about what happened here, and they will want to know what it means for the future." "What does it mean?" Paused at the door. "It means that humanity is no longer a minor species on the edge of known space. After today, everyone will know their name. Everyone will know what they can do, and everyone will have to decide whether to be their friend or their enemy." He looked back at the tactical display one last time, where the lone human ship sat among the wreckage of a conquered fleet. "I would strongly recommend friendship." 5 minutes passed slowly on the bridge of the USS Defiance. Commander Jack watched the tactical display as ship after ship powered down their weapons. The wave of surrender spread through the fleet like a disease, each captain making the choice to live rather than die for a cause that was already lost. But not all of them surrendered. "Commander," Kate Morgan reported, "I am counting approximately 30 vessels that have not powered down. They appear to be forming up on the far side of the debris field." Jack studied the formation. 30 ships was still a significant force, more than enough to cause serious damage if they made it past the Defiance to New Haven below. The remaining drones could handle them, probably, but it would be costly. "They are running," Ben Torres observed. "Look at their trajectory. They are not preparing to attack. They are trying to escape into deep space." Jack considered his options. He could order the drone swarm to pursue, to hunt down every last ship and ensure that none of them made it home to report what had happened. It would be the tactically sound decision. Dead enemies could not return with reinforcements. But Jack was not just a tactician. He was a human being, and human beings understood something that they did not. Mercy had value. Fear was useful, but fear combined with hope was more useful still. Let them go, he decided. Kate turned to look at him with surprise. Commander. Let them run. Let them go home to their empire and tell everyone what happened here today. Let them describe what a single human ship did to 300 of their finest vessels. That story will do more to protect human space than destroying 30 more ships ever could. Cole looked up from her station. Commander, several of the surrendering vessels are requesting to speak with you directly. Their captains want to discuss terms. Jack nodded. Tell them to stand by. We will process surrenders in an orderly fashion. Any ship that powers up weapons will be destroyed immediately. Anyone who follows the rules will be treated fairly. Aye, Commander. On the surface of New Haven, Governor Lisa Park finally allowed the tension to leave her shoulders. The battle was over. Her people were safe. 2 million colonists would sleep in their beds tonight instead of dying under orbital bombardment. Sam Wheeler stood beside her, still stunned by what he had witnessed. Governor, we need to make an announcement. The colonists are terrified. They need to know what happened. You are right. Lisa walked to the central podium of her office and activated the planetary broadcast system. Her image would appear on every screen, every device, every public display on New Haven. Citizens of New Haven, she began, her voice calm and steady. This is Governor Lisa Park. I am pleased to inform you that the threat to our colony has been eliminated. The fleet that attacked our system has been defeated. Over 100 enemy vessels have been destroyed or captured. The remainder have fled into deep space. She paused, letting the words sink in across the planet. In homes and businesses, in shelters and public squares, people stopped what they were doing to listen. This victory was achieved by a single ship, the USS Defiance, under the command of Commander Jack. 240 crew members faced 300 enemy warships, and they won. I want every citizen of New Haven to remember what happened here today. Remember that humans do not surrender. Remember that humans do not give up. Remember that when our people are threatened, we find a way to win. Sam watched her with new respect. The governor was already thinking about the future, about how this battle would be remembered, about the message it would send to the rest of the galaxy. To Commander and the crew of the Defiance, Lisa continued, on behalf of every man, woman, and child on New Haven, thank you. You are heroes. You are the best of humanity, and we will never forget what you did for us. She ended the broadcast and turned to Sam. Now we have work to do. We need to coordinate with the Defiance on processing prisoners. We need to secure the wreckage before scavengers arrive. And we need to send a report to Earth Command immediately. What should the report say? Lisa smiled grimly. It should say that the Empire made a very serious mistake, and they will not be making it again. Hours passed. The USS Defiance moved through the debris field, collecting surrender signals and coordinating with shuttles from New Haven. The surviving ships were escorted to holding positions, their crews confined to quarters while human Marines boarded to ensure compliance. It was tedious, careful work, but it was necessary. These prisoners would be bargaining chips in the negotiations to come. They would be proof of human capability and human mercy, evidence that humanity could be trusted to treat even their enemies fairly. In the medical bay of the Defiance, Dr. Amy finally had a moment to rest. The battle had produced remarkably few human casualties. 4 crew members had been wounded when a lucky shot had breached a secondary hull compartment. All 4 were expected to make full recoveries. 4 wounded, Amy muttered to herself. We fought 300 ships and we had 4 wounded. No deaths. How is that even possible? Her assistant, a young medic named Nick Santos, looked up from his work. It is possible because Commander is the best there is. He knew exactly what he was doing from the moment the enemy showed up. I suppose so. It still feels unreal. Most of human history feels unreal when you think about it, Doctor. We are a species that refuses to accept reality when reality is unfavorable. We just change reality instead. Amy laughed, a tired but genuine sound. That is either the most inspiring or the most terrifying thing I have heard today. Why not both? On the bridge, Commander Jack finally allowed himself to relax just a little. The battle was over, the enemy was defeated, and his crew was alive. All 240 of them. He had promised to bring them through this, and he had kept that promise. Kate Morgan approached with a data tablet. Preliminary reports are in, Commander. We destroyed 112 enemy vessels and captured 94. The rest escaped into deep space. Estimated enemy casualties are between 40 and 50,000. Human casualties are 4 wounded, 0 killed. Jack took the tablet and studied the numbers. 40 to 50,000 dead. Fathers, sons, brothers, beings who had families and dreams and lives that were now ended. He felt the weight of those deaths, even though they had been enemies, even though they had come to kill and conquer. War is terrible, he said quietly. Yes, it is. But if we had not fought, 2 million colonists would be dead or enslaved right now. Sometimes terrible is necessary. Jack nodded. I know, that does not make it easier. It is not supposed to be easy, Commander. The day it becomes easy is the day we have lost something important about ourselves. They stood together in silence for a moment, 2 warriors contemplating the cost of victory. Finally, Jack straightened and handed the tablet back. We have a lot of work ahead of us. The Empire will not take this loss quietly. They will want revenge, or at the very least they will want answers. We need to be ready. We will be ready, we always are. Jack looked around his bridge, at the crew members who had trusted him with their lives and had been rewarded with survival. Ben Torres at Tactical, Cole at Communications, and a dozen others who had performed flawlessly under impossible pressure. I want everyone to know how proud I am, he said, loud enough for the whole bridge to hear. What we did today will be remembered for a long time. We showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. We protected our people, and we did it together. A quiet murmur of acknowledgement passed through the bridge. These were not people who needed elaborate praise or celebration. They were professionals who had done their job, but it felt good to be recognized, to know that their captain saw their efforts and valued them. Now, Jack continued, let us finish the cleanup and get some rest. Something tells me this is just the beginning of a much longer story. He had no idea how right he was. 3 weeks after the Battle of New Haven, a diplomatic vessel arrived at the edge of human space. It came alone, flying under a flag of truce, requesting permission to speak with human representatives. The empire that had sent 300 warships to conquer was now sending 1 ship to talk. The meeting took place aboard Nexus Station, a neutral trading post where multiple species conducted business. Human Ambassador Nash arrived first, accompanied by a small security detail. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of calm expression that came from decades of diplomatic experience. He had negotiated treaties with a dozen species. He had prevented wars and ended conflicts, but he had never faced a situation quite like this one. The delegation arrived shortly after. Their leader was High Admiral, who had been appointed to replace the fallen. She was smaller than most military officers, with scales that shifted between dark blue and green depending on her mood. Her 4 eyes studied the human ambassador with an intensity that would have been uncomfortable for most species. Simply smiled and gestured to the chairs arranged around a circular table. Please be seated. Can I offer you refreshments? I understand enjoy fermented grain beverages. Hesitated, then nodded. That would be acceptable. A human aide brought drinks, and the 2 delegations settled into their places. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of what had happened at New Haven hung in the air like smoke. Finally broke the silence. Your people killed my predecessor. Nodded. Admiral attacked a peaceful colony. He threatened to murder 2 million civilians. Commander responded accordingly. With one ship, one single vessel destroyed our entire fleet. Not destroyed, defeated. Over 90 of your vessels surrendered and their crews were treated humanely. We have already begun repatriation discussions. Leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. How? I have watched the battle recordings 100 times. I have consulted with our finest tactical minds. No one can explain how it was possible. Took a sip of his own drink, a simple water. May I tell you a story, Admiral? If you believe it will help me understand. I do. Set down his glass and folded his hands on the table. Humans come from a world called Earth. It is a beautiful planet, but it is also dangerous. Our ancestors had to survive predators, diseases, natural disasters, and each other. They developed big brains and clever hands. They learned to make tools and weapons. But most importantly, they learned to think differently. Differently how? When a human faces a problem, we do not just look for the obvious solution. We look for the unexpected solution, the creative solution, the solution that no one else would think of. We ask ourselves what would happen if we tried something completely new. Considered this. The drones. No species uses autonomous swarms in that way. Because most species think of ships as individual combat units. Big gun versus big gun. Strong armor versus strong attack. Humans looked at that equation and asked a different question. What if we made the ship itself irrelevant? What if we filled it with 40,000 smaller weapons that could adapt and overwhelm any defense? It is an unconventional approach. Smiled. Humans are unconventional by nature. We do not accept the rules that other species take for granted. When someone tells us something is impossible, we take it as a challenge. Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost hesitant. My government sent me here to negotiate. They want peace, but they also want to understand. They are afraid, Ambassador. They have conquered many worlds, defeated many enemies, but they have never encountered anything like humanity. Fear is a reasonable response. I would be concerned if you were not afraid after what happened at New Haven. But fear does not have to lead to more conflict. It can lead to wisdom instead. Wisdom. Leaned back in his chair. The Empire has a choice to make, Admiral. You can see humanity as a threat to be eliminated, which will lead to more battles and more death. Or you can see us as a potential partner, a species with unique perspectives and capabilities that could benefit your empire through trade and cooperation. After what happened, you would offer us friendship. Of course, that is what humans do. We fight when we must, but we prefer to build. We prefer to create rather than destroy. We would rather share a meal with you than fire a weapon at you. Shook her head slowly. Your species confuses me, Ambassador. You show mercy to those who would have shown you none. You offer peace to those who came to conquer you. Why? Thought about the question carefully before answering. Because we understand that today's enemy can be tomorrow's friend. Because we know that cycles of revenge and retaliation lead nowhere good. And because, despite all our wars and conflicts, humans fundamentally believe in hope. We believe that beings can change, that relationships can improve, that the future can be better than the past. Even after 50,000 of our warriors died at New Haven. Yes, even after that. Those deaths were tragic, and I wish they had not been necessary. But the responsibility for them lies with Admiral, who chose to attack innocent civilians. Commander was defending his people. Any species would do the same. The negotiations continued for several hours. Terms were discussed, boundaries were established, and the framework for a lasting peace began to take shape. It would not happen overnight. Trust had to be rebuilt, wounds had to heal, but the foundation was there. As the meeting concluded, stood and offered the traditional gesture of respect, a lowering of the head that exposed the vulnerable scales at the back of the neck. It was a sign of submission, of acknowledgement that the other party had proven themselves worthy. Returned the gesture with a human handshake, clasping the Admiral's clawed hand firmly but gently. I look forward to working with you, Admiral. I think our peoples have much to offer each other. As do I, Ambassador, though I must confess one final curiosity. Yes, if we had not attacked New Haven, if we had simply requested passage through your space or asked to establish trade relations, what would have happened? Laugh softly. We would have said yes. We probably would have invited you to dinner. Humans are friendly by nature, Admiral. We enjoy meeting new species, learning about new cultures, sharing our stories and hearing yours. We only become dangerous when someone threatens the people we love. Nodded slowly. The galaxy has underestimated your species for too long. They usually do. We prefer it that way. Makes it easier to surprise people. On the USS Defiance, now undergoing repairs at the New Haven orbital shipyard, Commander Jack received the news of the peace negotiations with quiet satisfaction. His ship would be in dock for another month at least, and his crew had been granted extended shore leave. They had earned it. Kate Morgan found him on the observation deck, staring out at the stars through a massive viewport. The debris field from the battle had mostly been cleared, but occasionally a piece of wreckage would drift past, tumbling slowly in the void. Good news from Nexus Station, she said, joining him at the window. I heard. Sounds like Ambassador Nash is making progress. Thanks to what we did here, they are taking us seriously now. Jack nodded. That was always the goal, not to destroy them but to change their perception of us, to make them understand that attacking humanity is not worth the cost. Kate was quiet for a moment, watching the stars with him. Do you think it will last? The peace, I mean. I hope so, but if it does not, we will be ready. That is what we do. We prepare for the worst while hopping for the best. She smiled. Just one ship, that is what they kept saying, just one ship. Jack smiled back. It is never just one ship, Kate. It is never just one human or one family or one colony. When you threaten any part of humanity, you threaten all of us. We stand together. We fight together. And together, we are more than any enemy can handle. They stood in silence, two warriors at peace, watching the stars that humanity had claimed as their own. Somewhere out there, other species were watching too, listening to the stories that came from New Haven, learning about the single ship that had defeated an armada, wondering what it meant for the future of the galaxy. And slowly, carefully, deciding that friendship with humanity was far preferable to the alternative. The stars had never looked brighter.